off. All righty.
Hit the stage,
Well,
Emily.
Sorry.
Stage is yours, Emily.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us for day 2 of the Ascent demo day. I don't know who of you all was here yesterday, but what did you all think of day 1? Type it in the chat, let us know. Come on, don't be shy. No thoughts? Well, day 1 was a fabulous day. We had 6 great companies pitching across a wide range of industries, all related to deep tech. Let's get with it today. First, I'd like to thank our Ascent Accelerator team. You'll see us in this Zoom chat. My name is Emily. I am the Director of Venture Development for Venture Partners at CU Boulder. I get to work with all of these founders and technologies to really help bring them from idea to a full-fledged startup. I'd like to introduce very briefly my colleague Tasso. He is a venture fellow with our group. He will be moderating the majority of today. We also have Justin and Nicole. Justin's a venture fellow. Nicole works in business development, helping our companies find licensing agreements. They have just been a fantastic help for all of our teams over the last 4 months. So here we are. Feel free to find us in chat if you have any questions. We'd also like to give a couple more quick thank yous. First, to our program sponsors. This Ascent Deep Tech Accelerator is made possible by the Office of Economic Development. Rama, if you're in the audience, thank you so much for all of your support, in particular of the Ascent Deep Tech Accelerator. This is also hosted by Venture Partners. We'll talk a little bit more about what we do here on campus in a minute, but we would also like to thank our 2 corporate sponsors, Cushman & Wakefield and Berg Hill. They have made this event as well as a founder happy hour for a celebration for our founders this evening. So thank you all for your support. 2 more thank you slides. We had just an incredible group of mentors join us. This program started in January. We had mentors from all over, really all over the world, come and help support in everything from team building to product development. So thank you, mentors. I know some of you are in the audience right now. And then wanted to just give a little bit about what the heck we actually did during Ascent Deep Tech Accelerator. So this program is designed to help founders bridge the gap between their initial product market fit and really getting ready to step off campus, whether that's to raise outside funding, whether that's to join an external accelerator that's more focused in their industry, or whether that's to launch into selling to their first customer. We had a really, truly fantastic group of instructors join us over these last 4 months in everything from legal strategy to finance to product development to funding and options for equity and non-dilutive funding. So really a super interesting and super successful program over the last 4 months for these founders. A few quick notes on Venture Partners at CU Boulder for any of you who are not familiar. We function to translate groundbreaking research into new solutions, businesses, and partnerships that address the world's greatest challenges. Basically, we take inventions found, formulated at CU Boulder, and commercialize them into startups or licensing opportunities. We've really grown to be incredibly successful. Some call us a venture studio, some call us a startup accelerator. We, in this last fiscal year, 2021, we had 20 new companies, 171 total companies across our portfolio, a whole bunch of capital raised in the billions, and some really exciting exits. So I'll get to exits in a second, actually. But first, let me talk about the pathway that enables us to take these founders from research through to that $2.1 billion number, that billions of dollars in exits number. On campus, we have a variety of accelerators designed to get companies off campus and into the world. We do everything from handling IP for founders to establishing product market fit and doing intense customer discovery through programs like our regional I-Core programming. We have this Ascent Accelerator and licensing options to get them from initial commercialization ideas through to reality. We have options for non-dilutive funding to help stand up tech and commercialization opportunities. And we have opportunities for equity investment. Of note, we have recently partnered with a newly launched fund, the Buff Venture Fund, led by Sally Hatcher, Mark Lupa, and Warren Ng, who might be on this call. This is really providing a fantastic opportunity for our founders to get that first round of equity capital to accelerate their ideas. So I teased exits. We've had a couple of great success stories come out of CU Boulder in the last year. SomaLogic, Solid Power, you might know these names. Really exciting for our campus as well as our state. With that, let's get everything kicked off. I'll do a quick review of the schedule. I'll do a quick review of the rules of the day, kind of how this is going to go over the next hour and a half to 2 hours. And then I will hand it over to my colleague Tasso to introduce our first company. So we have 6 companies pitching. They range from biotech to med device companies, clean tech, transportation. Really a fantastic lineup here. I hope you're able to stick around for the full 2 hours. We will give these companies about 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes to pitch, and we'll open it up to question and answer with the audience. This is where all of you come in. This is not a sit in the background and answer your emails kind of show. We would love for you to be engaged. Please ask questions. Feel free to turn on your video and raise your hand. Tasso will find you, or else feel free to type in the chat any questions you have for these founders. It's really a great form of feedback, what's landing, what people still have questions on, and a great way for you to get to know these founders a little bit more. We'll go through those 6 pitches. We'll do a wrap up, hopefully right on the nose at 2 o'clock. We really try to keep good time here. And that's about it. Tasso, did I forget anything?
No, I think that pretty much covers it.
Awesome. Well, with that, Tasso, I will give it over to you. Please give a virtual round of applause for the 6 companies about to pitch. They really have worked so hard. And let's kick it off.
All right. So for our first presenter, I'm excited to introduce James Welts. James is the co-founder of Rigid Biotech, which is a predictive platform for enzyme stabilization by immobilization that reduces the time and cost to implement enzyme catalyzed reactions. So with that, take it away, James.
Thanks, Tasso. Can everyone see my screen okay and hear me okay? Great,
Yep.
Thanks so much for the intro. My name is James Welts. I'm the founder and CEO of Rigid Biotech, where we're making enzymes rugged and reliable tools for widespread adoption across the chemical industries. When we think of traditional manufacturing, we think of tools and processes like saws that take large objects and cut them down into small, precise shapes, or welding, which takes 2 objects and joins them together to make something larger. In chemical manufacturing, we have similar sets of tools called catalysts, which can break apart or form chemical bonds to create all sorts of materials, everything from plastics to pharmaceuticals. Biology has created its own class of catalysts called enzymes, and they have one particular advantage over man-made catalysts. They perform the desired chemistry and they do nothing else, eliminating side products and waste. And they have a tremendous opportunity to transform chemical manufacturing into a green and sustainable economy. Where the advantages really shine for enzyme catalysis is in the formation of complex organic molecules like drugs. The increasing complexity of emerging small molecule drugs are ideal candidates for enzyme catalysis. And notably, right now, as I speak, both COVID-19 oral drugs are currently being manufactured at scale using engineered enzymes to provide these life-saving medications. Despite these notable successes in enzyme catalyzed reactions in industry, enzymes have a severe limitation. When removed from a host organism, they quickly lose their function because they are inherently unstable. This short lifetime, as well as the narrow conditions under which enzymes remain active, is a primary challenge in implementing enzyme catalysts in green chemical manufacturing. At Rigid Biotech, we solve this problem through something known as enzyme immobilization, which converts enzymes into robust, reliable tools that can be implemented and using existing equipment.
A little less loud.
Sure, thanks for the feedback. We currently have a minimum viable product, the Rigid Enzyme Immobilization Kit, which we have sold to Janssen Pharmaceuticals, Johnson & Johnson, to produce an undisclosed API. We have also provided the samples to a startup called Enzyme for the sustainable production of petrochemical alternatives. Through our minimum viable product, initial product sales, and customer feedback, we have obtained the knowledge we need to further our business. Building on our initial product sales, we are developing a new business model, the Immobilization as a Service, which onboards our customers' enzymes and process and leverages our proprietary analytical approach to provide a custom solution which provides the stability needed for our customers for their given application. This allows us to provide them with a valuable service as well as follow-on sales of our custom product to them. Now, enzyme immobilization sounds pretty esoteric, but it's actually a mature industry with large chemical manufacturers such as Mitsubishi Chemical and Evonik producing large-scale enzyme immobilization supports for various chemical manufacturing processes. However, both the large chemical manufacturers as well as other exciting startups in this field all use materials engineered initially for other processes, such as water purification. And rigid enzyme immobilization supports represent the only materials engineered from the ground up for this particular application. I created this technology while a graduate student at the University of Colorado Boulder in Rigid Biotech, and we have filed a PCT application in November of last year for this technology. This provisional patent covers both the material compositions as well as our computational method to provide custom solutions for our customers. We hold an exclusive option with CU Ventures, and we hope to execute an exclusive license in early June of this year. Additionally, each custom solution that we provide to our customers provides additional opportunities for strong composition of matter patents to bolster our intellectual property moat. I am a solo founder. I'm joined by my father and brother who own and operate a small analytical testing and consulting laboratory, which enabled me to quickly bring this minimum viable product to market and perform my initial de-risking opportunities. What we're looking for, we need help. We're looking for partnership, especially folks that have any interest in learning or experience with the business development of complex pharmaceutical contracting. Additionally, we're excited to announce that we'll be raising seed capital in early next year to further develop our Immobilization as a Service business model. Thank you so much for your time. I welcome any questions or comments you may have for us. And I'd like to thank the Ascent program as well for their help over the last 4 months as we develop this business. Thank you very much for your time.
Great job, James. So anybody have questions for James, you can either type in the chat or feel free to raise your hand. All right, looks like. So I have a quick question for you, James. What is the scale up process look for something like this? Like, how do you go from the lab to actually producing at a commercial scale?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the advantages of our product is that typically we need much less of this material than the actual drug you'll be creating. And so additionally, we have the opportunity to be incorporated early on in the drug development process when small quantities of the drug are needed for initial discovery and preclinical applications. And so right now we're providing our customers at the milligram and gram scale to produce those quantities of drugs, but we will need capital and a little bit of development to help as our customers scale their processes into the kilogram and ton range.
Awesome. It looks like Sally has a question. Sally Hatcher. Go ahead,
Great,
Sally.
thanks, Tasso. James, this is fantastic. I love the evolution in over time of how you're simplifying this and really making it understandable for everybody in the room. Can I ask you, I'm trying to simplify the question. So I'm curious about these initial strategics, and what do you expect to get back after they sample your product? Are you looking for joint development? Are you looking for them to directly purchase your enzyme, or what do you need to actually get traction?
Yeah, that's a great question. Every product sale that we make is an opportunity to scale with our customer as they scale into their process. Additionally, with our immobilization as a service model, it provides us the opportunity to troubleshoot these processes as our customers scale. So we really see ourselves as providing an invaluable process development service as our customers scale these manufacturing processes. So that means both direct product sales, but more importantly, this service-based business model, which allows us to capture more value.
Great. Looks like we have a question in the chat from Margie. Do you have any agreements signed up with J&J and any revenues to date? And what is your anticipated raise next year? And how are you funding your current term?
Yeah, so currently we're funded through friends and family, and that's allowed us to get these initial product sales. We do not have any agreement yet with either Johnson & Johnson or Invizyne. However, we're working to foster working relationships with them and demonstrate our ability to solve these complicated technical problems. We have no meaningful revenue at this point, but we expect to generate significant revenue through our service business model. And the raise is for approximately $1 million to help us execute on this immobilization as a service business model. That would primarily be for our first critical hire and for some laboratory equipment that we need to perform these tasks.
Great. Bill Jeffrey wants to know, what prevents your competitors from designing a similar enzyme immobilizer from the ground up?
Yeah, so we have a strong patent that we believe will prevent others from using our fundamental technology, which is really an approach rather than a particular material. And this approach seems to work very well. It has significant performance enhancements compared to the current state of the art.
Great. Eva would like to know how long the average development time is with a partner once they're on board.
That's a great question. Our pharmaceutical customers are primarily concerned with speed. They need to bring a drug to market as quickly as possible to recoup research and development costs before patent expiration. And so it's really the faster, the better. And one of the advantages of our approach to enzyme stabilization is that it's significantly faster than other forms of enzyme engineering, which typically require months to years, whereas our process only takes hours to days.
So Susan Krause would like to know if there is joint IP in these pharmaceuticals and in these agreements.
Yes, so pharmaceutical manufacturers, the vast majority of major pharmaceutical manufacturers all have significant in-house enzyme engineering efforts where they're creating their own custom enzymes. And if they want to use our product development services, then we will need to come up with a non-disclosure agreement in order to onboard their proprietary enzymes and use them with our technology.
Margie would like to know if you have to get any other approval for this, like FDA, for instance.
Yeah, so in pharmaceutical manufacturing, enzyme immobilization supports are known as reagents and therefore are not subject to current good manufacturing processes or practices. We're also interested in the food modification market, which represents also a significant market for mobilized enzymes. This requires an FDA food context safe designation, which would require significant more time and capital. In that case, we're waiting to further de-risk our technology before we commit to that expensive endeavor.
Great. Sally would like to know, why do you call this immobilization as a service? Are you providing a product development service and then delivering the enzymes? Is there recurring revenue?
There is recurring revenue. So by providing them with a custom solution, we then become the exclusive supplier of that material. And so there's significant opportunity for repeat product sales in escalating quantities as the drug moves through the commercialization process.
Excellent. So can you tell me a little bit about your sales channels? So, what are your sales channels in the near future? And then how do you expect those to change as you grow?
Great question. So right now, the pharmaceutical companies are really struggling with these technical challenges. And so they're very active in publishing in the scientific literature. And pretty much every large pharmaceutical manufacturer has significant scientific publications. And that includes an email address. So that's been a really powerful way for us to both develop our products by communicating with technical people, but also provide these early sales channels from technical person to technical person. As we grow and expand, we expect that these contracts will become more and more complex, requiring some of the intellectual property concerns that I already talked about. Additionally, we see ourselves kind of going in earlier and earlier on in the development process, which requires a different type of employee at these large pharmaceutical companies than the technical folks that we currently deal with.
Great answer. Does anybody else have any more questions for James?
Why did you name it Rigid Biotech?
That's a great question. We have a really nice scientific publication, and it deals with the physics underlying what causes the stabilization. And while it's been observed for many, many decades, nobody really knew what the mechanism was. And we've discovered this mechanism, and we call it enzyme rigidification, which makes these enzymes, which are normally very squishy and delicate, very rigid and rugged and reliable.
Sally Hatcher would like to know, have you looked at non-dilutive funding like SBIRs?
Absolutely. We have a current SBIR application that we're hoping to submit as soon as possible, which will address some of our early concerns by our customers regarding leachability.
Great. Another question I have is, when you raise this money, how are you going to build your team? Who are going to be your first hires, and how is that going to sort of shape your initial strategy?
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned before, we're really looking for folks that will help us with the business development side of things. So we recognize we're looking for a unicorn here, somebody who has experience in the complex world of pharmaceutical service contracts, as well as some of the intellectual property exchanges there. We're also willing to bring on somebody who's really eager and excited just to learn about these things with us as we grow. So that's really our number one priority in terms of our first hire and building the team. And again, I'd like to thank the Ascent program for opening up their mentorship network. That's been really helpful in meeting a lot of people in this industry.
Awesome. Well, that is time for James and Rigid Biotech. So let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
All right. So next up, we have Jim Pollock with Luminastra. And so Luminastra is a revolutionary new way to measure body temperature. And Jim is going to tell you a little bit about what that means for the medical community.
Okay, well, thank you, Todd. So can everybody see my buffalo gold and black screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, trying to keep it appropriate here for Ascent. So I'm Jim Pollock, and I'm the CEO and co-founder, along with a great group of people at Luminastra, where we are collaborating with the University of Colorado Radio Frequency Lab, to create and commercialize a patented wearable, non-invasive sensor that's tiny, the size of a bandage, that measures internal body temperature several centimeters below the skin, wherever you place it on your body. So what's important about this? A good example is the first interview we had with a cardiothoracic surgeon, Dr. John Mihal, who's done 4,000 cardiac surgeries, said that if you can build these for under $500 a piece, well, just send me a box. I'm going to start using them tomorrow. And the reason he said that is exemplified by a friend of mine I'm going to call Rob, who year before last visited his doctor because he wasn't feeling quite right. He was diagnosed with an upper aortic dissection, which is basically where you get a tear between the layers of the aorta, sending blood to all the wrong places in your body instead of to the brain. The good news is that he wasn't dead already, because 50% of the people never make it to the doctor. An aortic repair to fix this is the third most dangerous surgery available. The bad news is that they're going to have to cool his brain down until he flatlines. They're going to shut off the blood supply to the brain. That gives the surgeon 30 minutes to actually make the repair before permanent brain damage occurs. And there's even more bad news, because there's a 17% chance that Rob is going to die during the surgery. There's a 2% chance of having a stroke and major brain damage, and a 66% chance of cognitive loss of some form due to bleeding. The problem is there's no direct way to measure brain temperature today. So instead, a nasal and a bladder catheter are used, and these are very poor surrogates for what the brain temperature is, which means the surgeon has to wait an extra 10 to 20 minutes to make sure the brain reaches target temperature. With our sensor, we get instant direct brain temperature measurement from outside. The surgeon immediately can start the surgery as soon as the target temperature is met, which means a shorter time at cold. So our sensor can cut surgical time by 20%. We can lower mortality rate, therefore, by 20 to 25%. And a study of 1,600 aortic repairs showed that reducing surgical and cold time has a profound effect, lowering mortality and brain damage. So Rob's okay, but it was a $600,000 surgery, which means we got a big opportunity for a price to value. There's 36,000 of these done each year, but this is our beachhead of aortic repair. What's next? Well, we've done over 150 customer interviews through the Ascent and ICOR program, and we've identified quite a few very significant applications that include going into ICUs to monitor brain temperature after brain trauma, early warning of a heat stroke for military and athletes, measuring temperatures while heating tumors for cancer co-therapy, monitoring infants with poor blood supply, fertility window monitoring, improved health and COVID screening, and a very early warning of infection and sepsis after surgery in ICU units. So a lot of different applications. Now, here's our strategy and how we're going to approach that kind of from bottom up. So we're starting off next year by introducing this aortic repair thermometer. There's a $36 million market, and it'll get us to our first $1 million of revenue. Then we're going to move into clinical cooling systems, where we get into monitoring the brain after cardiac arrest, brain trauma, and stroke in ICUs. That's an additional $450 million opportunity. And then an additional $2.3 billion opportunity is clinical warming systems, which one segment is targeting tumors for heating to increase the efficacy of chemo and radiation. Then after, in 2025 and later, there's also a $1 billion opportunity in the consumer thermometry space. Now, let's talk about consumer thermometry just for a moment. There's already 120 brands out there. It's very well commoditized, and there's huge pressure for price to costing there. So we would never go into the consumer market unless the number one brand of all consumer thermometry came to us with a letter of intent that they would like to integrate our premium consumer, our sensor into their premium consumer and doctor office gold standards. And they're perfectly happy with us starting out in surgical and being patient until we get our costs down to go into the consumer market, because they want to be able to put on the package, this is the choice of surgeons. So we've got some good opportunities there. Let's look at the numbers. So we're going to have no revenue this year, but then we'll start layering in the aortic repair, ICU applications, and consumer applications over the next several years. That will take us up to about $20.5 million a year conservatively in revenue. Our business model is a recurring sales for a wearable device with a strong emphasis on white label distribution partners. And we got a lot of partners in all these different verticals that I've mentioned to you. Our exit strategy will be acquisition by one of these partners, and probably even multiple exits, because we're in quite a few different non-competing verticals. We've got a terrific team. I'm an MIT geek who's done 8 early stage and startup companies with 5 exits. Dr. Popovich is our CTO. She is a Caltech PhD, distinguished professor, IEEE fellow. She's the inventor of this technology and leading our efforts to get it out of the lab into the commercial market, along with Walter Wong, who is a director of engineering for Seagate for 20 years, where he's listed on 35 patents at Seagate, and actually a member of the Seagate Patent Hall of Fame, 10 years of experience in medical device work, and also an expert at manufacturing at high volume. Dr. Mihal is the strategic advisor to us from the cardiac surgery realm. Lou Faust is on our outside board of directors. He was 10 years director of global operations for Salomon Brothers. He brings us a little bit of financial gravitas. And then we've got a terrific team of PhD and postdoc researchers that are actually working to de-risk this technology, get it out into the market. So checking off the final boxes, intellectual property, we've got a CU patent that was issued in 2019, very strong, 17 claims of critical methods. And we're currently filing a new patent with additional claims. Our FDA certification, we're working on our strategy right now for a 2023 submission. That'll be a class 2 501(k) submission for a passive, non-invasive device. And for funding, we've had a good streak here of getting non-dilutive funding. We've raised in the last 18 months between the lab and Luminastra, 1.5 million in non-dilutive funds. The founders have 60K of our personal money and skin in the game. And then also the SBIR that we picked up a few months ago positions us well for a phase 2 for an additional $750K to $1 million. So our opportunity is we're looking for about $1 million to raise right now. We just last Thursday started that with a $250K grant from the state of Colorado OEDIT. So that's a great match. It requires a match. It's a great opportunity for any of you that want to do some investing with us to have your dollar instantly improved. And the use of the funds, we're going to be bringing some part-time contractors on board as full-time engineering and also in business development. And we think this money will get us completely prepared for our FDA equivalence data gathering. So we've got a great team of people I'm very excited to work with. And we've got some very, very important applications that we can make a big difference to the lives and quality of life for millions of people. So with that, we'd love to hear some of your questions and give you a place to send checks to.
All right. Anybody have some questions for Jim and Luminastra? I'll start out with one. So what's the current status of your technology? And can you tell me a little bit about the progress that you've made towards commercialization so far?
Yeah, so I've always said good question is any question I know the answer to. A great question is when I got a slide for it. And a perfect question is when it's the next slide. So our progress, basically, last summer we had a lab prototype that literally was a 2x4 with discrete components on it you're seeing here, which is very uncomfortable, I might add, if you place it on your forehead. This winter, we've reduced that down to a board that's a credit card size and has a sensor that plugs into it that enables us to be portable and start gathering data. We're right now getting back a half credit card size board with the sensor actually on the back of it. So we have a single unit, half a credit card size. We can actually start gathering data on skin and on people. And we've also just got back our first, I would say silicon, but it's actually a gallium arsenide chips. And that chip that you see there, one of those chips replaces everything that's on that 2x4. It's the size of George Washington's nose. That's a nose on the quarter, not the real nose. So, and we think that our entire thing will be about a 3-chip set to build this whole sensor.
Excellent. Can you talk a little bit more about the approval process for clinical applications? This is a question from Calvin Serpine.
Yeah, so we're working on our strategy to figure that out right now so we can really make it as efficient as possible. Basically, what we have to do is we need to be able to show a substantial equivalence to either for both technical equivalence and risk equivalence to some existing devices. And one strategy we're looking at right now is actually to be able to show a technical equivalence to a thermistor that's inserted inside of an animal like a pig's just behind the skull. We're looking at basically head applications first, skull brain applications first. And then also we've got some neurosurgeons that have volunteered to say that when they're doing open skull surgery, that they'd be happy to let us, poor choice, but piggyback with them to make a passive measurement while they have the skull open and actually have a thermistor, positioned inside the brain. And then when it comes to risk equivalent, well, we're having a wearable device I can just stick on the forehead is a whole lot less risky than having to cut the skull open, which just plain isn't done, in normal operations. So we think that's what our path is going to be looking like.
Great. Tim Jones would like to know a little bit more about your manufacturing strategy and how it might fit in with your exit strategy.
Yeah, so our strategy all along here is to build a sensor component. And then that component can then be integrated. We can actually build that into a device that is a standalone device, it's wearable, or it can be integrated with other devices. For example, in a health monitoring package that would have respiration, heart rate, gait, acceleration, et cetera. So multiple sensor packs. So we want to be able to be standalone or to be able to be integrated with others by another manufacturer. We expect to have some standalone devices ourselves, and those would be white labeled by some of these other manufacturers that I mentioned before that are in patient monitoring, for example, Masimo, Philips, GE, et cetera, or some of those same companies already make some sensor packages that they would integrate those into their own.
Great. Warren,
and just to finish, and then any of those people that we're working with like that are obviously candidates for an acquisition of us. So we think every one of those is going to be a possibility or multiple for exits.
Great. Warren would like you to elaborate on your capital raise. What milestones do you hope to achieve through your seed stage? And does the 1 million in funding provide adequate time to achieve the stage milestones?
So yeah, so we think that's going to give us, with the money we've raised already that we still got available with this $1 million, that should take us all the way to where we're going to have some field prototypes ready to go and have all of our, actually have done preliminary measurements and all, so we really have a thorough understanding for our FDA. And we will be expecting to do an additional raise, going into next year that'll actually carry us through the actual FDA approval itself.
Excellent. Sally Hatcher would like to know, can you tell us more about the clinical path versus the mass market? Are these both ongoing or in sequence? And where are you focusing?
Totally in sequence. We're starting, very, very obviously, we're trying to start with the aortic repair surgery. The exact sensor that does the aortic repair will then we extend, right beyond. Sorry, here it gives us that. It is also clinical as well, and very acute. And then followed by that is some additional clinical. So these will all be a sequence of clinical activities with literally almost the same sensor, just with different marketing thrusts and all that. The consumer space won't be for a period of time. We're having the conversation right now, and it's actually giving us a very healthy dose of just the requirements. So we really understand it puts some pressure on us as far as getting our costs down. Because right now we can build these things, we think, for $50 to $75 and sell them in a clinical setting for anywhere from $250 to $1,000, depending on the application and the specifications. And the clinical, and for consumer, we're going to have to get it down into the $25 and even less than that for mass consumers. So that gives us time to work on getting our cost structure down. But it's definitely, these are all sequential, and the consumer, just enough conversation so we keep our eye on that ball down the road.
Super, Jim. And just to follow up, then the Braun, is that a clinical part of Braun or their CPG side? I was just confused.
That is totally their consumer space.
Okay.
So that in fact, it's, as they said, it's moms with kids is their target market.
Thanks.
Ava would like to know, what kind of clinical data are you gathering or will you be gathering for the FDA submission? Are you focusing on the cardiac context?
So yes, and so what's been really fascinating is I've never, in the startups I've done in my past, I have never had this enthusiastic response from potential, from interviews that we've done. And we've talked to multiple cardiothoracic surgeons that get into these aortic repairs and other cardiac surgeries and bypass surgeries. And they all, not only are they excited about this, but they want to be first on the line to try these things out. And so we've got several, in fact, even at Anschutz here, which, at several learning universities and teaching schools, that they want to be first in line to be able to use these in parallel with their existing surgeries to start gathering data. So we're going to have a great opportunity because, again, we're a non-invasive device, so they can actually just use it while they're not making decisions with our device, but basically use it and gather data. So we're going to be able to start gathering this summer. We think at the end of this summer, some actual patient data and really refine our design.
All right. And so we have time for one last question. James Graham would like to know, Will you be able to, can you elaborate on your go-to-market strategy, and do you have plans to collaborate with medical device manufacturers?
Absolutely. So basically, as I mentioned, this sequence of the applications, and for each one of these applications, there are definitely, there's quite a few people out there. So we're a natural match for people that are doing patient monitoring systems like GE, Medtronic, Masimo, Philips, people that create the actual cooling systems and the bypass pumps that are used in this aortic repair, Getange, Belmont Medical, Terumo, BD, which also has a bolder presence, consumer space. And then in cancer, we've had a lot of people that are doing the heating of tumors that desperately need a way to measure the temperature. And so Elmedics, Thermofield, quite a few companies there, and they're all anxious when we get to that time in our timeline to be able to actually team up with us there. So definitely a lot of partnership opportunities. We don't expect to do any branding of our own, hardly at all.
Great. So that is it for the time. So everybody give a huge round of applause to Jim and Luminastra.
Well, thank you, and thank the Ascent and CU Ventures team.
All right. So next up, we have Jimmy with Tissue Form. So Tissue Form supplies long-lasting natural replacement biomaterials to positively impact patients suffering from tissue loss due to disease, damage, or aging. And so with that, I'll let you take it away, Janie.
Awesome. Thanks, Tasso. Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Let's put this away. Hello and good afternoon. My name is Jeannie Barthold, and I'm one of the founders of Tissue Form. Our mission at Tissue Form is to improve life for people affected by volumetric tissue loss. We do this by harnessing the natural and restorative power of the extracellular matrix. Reconstructive surgery has the power to dramatically improve a patient's quality of life. And yet there are so many medical needs and challenges that require the use of long-term regenerative materials to restore lost tissue volume or provide a sense of self. Long-lasting solutions are needed for patients with gender dysphoria, lipodystrophy of the face, and hands.
Not seen in the core sheet.
Oh, sorry, I hear sound. So, okay. So even in cosmetics, patients desire long-term solutions that involve dermal fillers used to provide tissue volume and new body contours. But the problem is that fillers are short-lasting. According to a recent survey, 8 of 9 million patients experience filler fatigue from exhausting repeated injections that are required to maintain their confidence and quality of life. 91% of these patients are interested in long-lasting products. And as a result, 88% of people would likely elect more costly procedures if they experience success with a long-lasting filler. So that's where Tissue Form comes in. We've developed a platform biomaterial technology to improve life for people affected by volumetric tissue loss. We harness the natural and restorative power of the extracellular matrix for a regenerative repair. Our first product is Natroderm, a filler used for reconstructive and cosmetic surgery to restore tissue volume. The reconstructive and cosmetic surgery market is large and growing. Of that, our serviceable addressable market for fillers is currently an $8 billion market. Our product is a biomaterial, which is packaged in a 2-syringe system that is mixed and then injected. Our injection process for clinicians is identical to existing fillers, making adoption of Natroderm easy. The novel stabilizing chemistry initiates upon that mixing and introduction to body temperature. Natroderm is injected, filling a defect and immediately restoring tissue volume. Natroderm contains a non-cellular tissue powder packed together and formed to the desired shape after the injection. The particles then promote cells from the surrounding tissue to deposit new tissue matrix within this injected material. The tightly woven proteins of these particles enable Natroderm to resist the degradation from the natural enzymes that we learned so much about from James earlier today. And unlike the standard fillers, which break down quickly from this natural enzymatic response. Competitive products such as the hyaluronic acid-based Juvederm and Restylane that you may have heard of only last months in the body. Alternatively, there are synthetic products like Belafil and Radiesse with synthetic beads in a gel carrier, which have an improved lifespan, but they actively promote scar tissue formation beneath the skin. In contrast, Natroderm lasts as long as the semi-permanent fillers while promoting this regenerative cell ingrowth that I just showed you. In fact, in a recently completed pivotal animal study, we compared Natroderm directly against the competitive products that I just showed you. And Natroderm showed 90% survival 5 months after injection, better than the competitors. Natroderm also showed outstanding biomimicry of surrounding tissue structure and is the only filler to provide natural growth factors, which promote positive cellular activity. And it is natural, unlike the popular permanent fillers such as Radiesse with a synthetic bone-like mineral inclusions, or Belafil, which injects plastic beads. Natroderm proves a superior class of biomaterial and will be charged for accordingly. The cosmetic market, importantly, has the key advantage that the products are sold directly to clinics, and we will target providers who are interested in providing these long-lasting fillers as a premium product. From customer discovery, we understand that commercialization of Natroderm allows for potential future use in broader reconstructive surgery, which increases the provider's reach. Tissueform's go-to-market strategy includes leveraging a fragmented provider space focused in urban centers. We target market entry in early 2025, focusing first on sales at our clinical trial sites in particular, while laying the groundwork at new clinics to expand regionally. Importantly, there are additional key exit opportunities based on comparable companies who had achieved these specific FDA milestones, and we will certainly pursue these opportunities as we move along this pathway. So to date, we've significantly de-risked Natroderm. We defined and optimized our product formulation. We've established manufacturing and contract agreements for regulatory approval. We've completed a pivotal biocompatibility animal study with excellent success, and we've set a pre-submission meeting with the FDA. With investment, we will be able to execute on our current manufacturing and quality assurance contracts, confirm our animal study biocompatibility results just in an FDA certified lab, and then we will be able to file for initial device exemption. This will allow Tissueform to conduct a short-term clinical trial, followed by the full PMA filing at the FDA. Tissueform leadership includes myself, a bioengineering scientist and employee at Tissueform, and Corey, who's a co-founder and CU Boulder professor with expertise in tissue-engineered scaffolds and regenerative medicine. Importantly, to reach our next critical milestone of IDE approval, we have established regulatory and manufacturing partners, which expands our team's expertise dramatically, and we're beginning to execute on these contracts with our partners. We've been able to successfully build the company so far using non-dilutive funding. And additionally, we've been fortunate to be advised by a talented team of medical, scientific, and business leaders with distinct expertise in areas of need to advance Tissueform towards market. We are now opening up a seed funding round and are seeking $2 million to execute on our defined contracts, which will accelerate our manufacturing and biocompatibility studies to advance us to this critical milestone of submission and approval of an FDA initial device exemption. This will set us up for a second funding round for clinical trials in 2024, followed by market entry. Now, at the same time, as I mentioned previously, we recognize that the strategy of large players in the field who are focused on mergers and acquisitions. After seed funding, there is the potential for an early exit with a 10x return. And after clinical trials, further comparable exits have occurred with greater company value. We will engage with strategic partners as these milestones are hit in the development of Natroderm. Investment in Natroderm, a biomaterial for volumetric tissue loss in cosmetic and reconstructive surgery, will de-risk Natroderm and get the product close to market. Additionally, This investment will also de-risk our biomaterial as a platform technology that we know can be applied to future follow-on markets with need for regenerative biomaterials, including bioprinting and orthopedic tissue repair, which are also two large and growing markets. With that, we're tissue form, and I'll remind you that our mission is to improve life for people affected by volumetric tissue loss through harnessing the natural and restorative power of the extracellular matrix. We would absolutely love to talk more with any of you if you're interested in joining us on this journey. And I'm also happy to take any questions at all at this point. Thank you so much for your time and your attention, and thank you to the previous Ascent Accelerator cohort mates for their great pitches as well.
Thank you very much, Jeannie.
Thanks, Tasso.
So while people type out their questions, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So can you tell me a little bit about is there any training necessary for the clinicians who are going to be using this? And if so, how will you facilitate that as you push your sales?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks. So because the process is pretty identical in terms of the injection themselves and the needle size, there's no additional training needed for that portion of it. The portion where you mix the two syringes is something that there are products out there that do something similar. So in our customer discovery, we have talked with cosmetic surgeons a lot, and that doesn't faze them at all. It's something they do all the time. That being said, it's a new product. You want them to know the exact feel. And so this is why our sales force would start with the clinical trial sites and use those people as advocates for our material and our product to be able to inform the industry as a whole.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. How did you land on the cosmetic surgery market as your beachhead?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have done a lot of different work in the lab in different markets and different areas, but we landed on the cosmetic surgery market for a few key reasons. The first was the market size paired with the fact that this product is sold directly to the provider. So that's something pretty unique in the medical device world. There's no, at least at this point in the cosmetic space, there's no reimbursement. So there are reimbursement codes that already exist so that later we can expand, and they exist for things like the lipodystrophy and for some of the gender dysphoria surgeries and other medical needs. There's like several allowable uses. But for now, for the cosmetic market, it is direct to the provider, which provides a very key advantage. And the second is the clinical trial pathway is very short and very small number of patients for most clinical trial pathways. So it's only 6 months and 175 patients and is done in an outpatient clinic. So the costs are dramatically reduced for this first market.
Excellent. Michael Kuhe would like to know, is there a process by which the product can be dissolved in situations where it may have been injected improperly or the patient experiences an adverse reaction?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And that's something we actively are doing a lot of work on in the lab. And the short answer is yes. So the cross-linking between the hyaluronic acid and these particles, those bonds can be very easily broken with this hyaluronidase enzyme that clinicians use already to reverse the hyaluronic acid fillers. So if you get some sort of adverse reaction or a giant like polyp in the face, which they find sometimes with these Radiesse and Bellafill products, you can break down those HA bonds and spread out the filler. The actual particles themselves are harder to break down, and that's something we're working on in the lab, but they are only on scale of about 40 microns. So it's a very minimal size. It doesn't cause, you can break down the actual volumetric part of it, if that makes sense.
Great. Sally Hatcher would like to know if you have a timeline to your next milestone and also the anticipated costs to reach that next milestone.
Yeah, so our next big milestone is approval of an initial device exemption. So that first step in that FDA process is basically the IDE, and then you're able to go do clinical trials and file for the full PMA. So for our IDE timeline, we anticipate $2 million for all of the aspects of staffing and hiring and all of the studies and the manufacturing, which is why that is our seed raise amount. The timeline will take, if we are able to have everything go right, it will take 12 months, but we are anticipating 18 months because there's been so many issues with manufacturing, back ordering, and things like that. So we're giving ourselves a little buffer. But to get to that IDE milestone, 12 months is our safe bet, and we're anticipating 18 and budgeting for that.
Great. Susan Krause has a question. You mentioned that there's something that has to be done after the injection to get the injection to perform as desired for structural results. Can you elaborate on this and discuss how difficult it would be to train doctors to perform this procedure?
Yeah, so thanks, Susan, for that question. So I should clarify that that's something that normally will happen. So a provider will normally inject a filler and then they might shape it a little with their hands to make sure it's in the exact area that they want, especially with some of these more viscous, longer lasting fillers. When you inject it in a certain way, the doctor wants control to make sure it is exactly, if it's a cheekbone you're trying to get, they want it to be in line with that and the exact appearance that you want. So doctors will typically shape those materials to be that exact volume that you're looking for. And that is also true with ours. So you don't have to do anything to activate it. The mixing and the injecting, it's basically the temperature of your body that allows that material to cross-link into place over 30 minutes. So that you have 30 minutes to shape it, get it how you want, and then it's cross-linked into that shape.
All right, we've got time for one more question. And so this is from Eva. But she wants to know, how long does the injection last in the patient?
Yeah, Eva, thanks. That's a really good question. And it's a question we get a lot. The hard answer for that is it really depends on the location and it really depends on the patient. So in humans, they see this all the time in fillers. We also see this in mice where it breaks down way faster than others. Our injections were very high volume still at 5 months in mice. And in mice, they have about a 2-year lifespan. And so it's generally quite accelerated. And so some of the other fillers like Belafil and Radiesse, we know in humans are shown to last somewhere between 1.5 years and 5 years, depending on the patient and where it's injected. And our fillers were in parallel, if not even more longer lasting than that in mice. So we haven't done this in humans at all, right? And we haven't done this in humans for that period of time, but that's what we predict based on our pivotal animal study.
Awesome. Well, that's all the time we have for tissue form. So everybody give it a round of applause for Jeannie.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. Please feel free to reach out if you have any more questions.
All right. So next up, we have Sam Wazinski, and he is a co-founder of Bouth. Bouth is a new vehicle immobilizer that provides vehicles with an improved anti-theft protection that's resistant to cyber attacks.
Hey, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay. And we see the slides okay?
Yep, great.
Okay. So like you mentioned, I'm Samuel Wazinski. Dr. Lang had a last minute meeting come up with the college, so I'm going to be filling in for him right now. And I'm going to be presenting Bouth, which is a vehicle immobilizer meant to reduce the risk of some cybersecurity threats that I'm going to talk about. So first of all, why are we doing this? You can see that over the last couple of years, partially pandemic related, there's been a pretty high increase in car thefts. And there's been a 9% increase since in 2020. And it's looking like there's going to be, the data shows there's going to be an even higher increase in 2021. And in the Denver area alone, we've seen a 73% increase in car thefts. And currently Colorado has the 3rd highest rate of auto thefts in the nation. So one of the key contributors to this, the cyber smart that I was talking about earlier, has to do with the key fob on your car. So these images here, you can see wireless replay attacks and key cloning. Your key fob, even when you're not actively like unlocking your car, it's constantly transmitting a signal. And these wireless replay attacks, people can buy these aftermarket modules. They just get close to your house. They can read the signal, boost it, send it to your car. If you have a push to start car, that's actually enough for them to drive it away just like that. And if you have a physical key with the key fob, then all they have to do is do the hot wire and then boom, your car's gone. And this organization performed a test on a pretty wide variety of different cars and model brands and found that 99% of vehicles are vulnerable to this kind of attack. So where does BIOth come into this? How does it help prevent it? So we've kind of seen a progression from just regular old physical keys to using physical keys and key fobs. Now you have push to start cars, and BIOth will ideally be the next step in that. So BIOth actually uses a physical power communication that's not vulnerable to any of these wireless attacks that I'm talking about. And here's a little overview diagram of the technology itself. There's essentially two parts. The back end module is mounted directly on top of the car battery. The front end module is a dongle that you can plug into the 12-volt system on your car. You can actually do this just through the cigarette lighter in your vehicle. And you can enter in a password through that cigarette lighter connection or use fingerprint authentication. And this right now is presented as kind of like a two-factor authentication. So you would have your key that you plug in and start like normal on your key fob, and then you would have this additionally on top of that. So this is the third version of the prototype. It's been tested across 8 different vehicles, and they have a wide variety of like battery sizes. Not every vehicle is the same battery size, has different starting amperage, stuff like that. And overall, the results have been pretty good. We've seen a 99.9% accuracy across all of these different models. So the market and the competitors that we're working against. So the vehicle anti-theft systems market is projected to have some pretty healthy growth, reaching up to about 19 billion by 2027. You can see a little chart here where BIOth would be convenient and resistant to cyber attacks at the same time, compared to some of the traditional alarm systems that you can install right now. Those use the OBD system, like the CAN bus in the vehicle. That not only requires you to have about like 8 different wiring connections, but it's also easily manipulated. Like there's lots of car programmers that you can buy to do that kind of stuff. So that's how we showed that placement on the graph there. And we've also gotten some feedback from car owners. We did some online surveys with over 700 different participants. You can see some of the results from it right here. Overall, it seems overwhelmingly positive, with 4.1 out of 5 people saying that they would be willing to install this on their vehicle. And overall, the ease of use and acceptability of the product seems pretty good. So commercialization preparation. Early funding that we've gotten 450K from NSF, 92 from LVC, and CU Denver Innovation Award for 5K. We have been the finalist of the Rut Bridges Venture Fund, the Lewis Family Innovation Award, and there are 2 patents filed specifically just for BIOth itself. There's also 6 other related patents that have to do with battery and car technologies, of which 4 of those are already granted, and we have 2 more pending. And additionally, we've participated in multiple accelerator programs such as this, and we're looking at like R2M and some other stuff like that. Commercialization plan. So phase 1, we're looking at about 18 months. And that is the second factor authentication that I talked about, where you would still have your regular key and key fob and everything. And this would be an additional layer of security on top of that. You enter an additional password or fingerprint or whatever. Then phase 2, which is more of like the end goal that we're looking at, 48 months. And the idea would be to completely replace your keys and key fobs entirely, and it could just be BIOth. So financial need for this project, we're looking at 1.1 million for 18 months. And some of the sources that we're looking at are listed right there. and there's a breakdown of roughly where we expect to see that funding go to. And finally, we have our team, which besides myself, we have Dr. Lang He, who is a professor at the University of Denver, Colorado. Dr. King Shin, who works at the University of Michigan, has over 88 PhD graduates, and he's an executive advisor for Samsung. Then we have Dr. Lane Liang, who's been helping with the marketing stuff as an advisor, and Dr. Tom Altman, who is the founder of Stillman in Denver. Then finally, there's just a little recap slide over here, and I'll go ahead and take any questions that anyone has.
All right, thanks a lot, Sam. So, all right, looks like there's a question from Warren here. Is there an on-unit battery backup in the event the unit is disconnected from the battery?
Yes, there is. So there's actually, I mentioned there's the two parts. There's the thing on top of the battery, and then there's the thing you would have in your car to enter the password. Both of those have battery backups, and they detect when they are disconnected from the vehicle itself, and they alarm as well.
Great, great.
Oh, and I forgot to mention that there's also a YouTube link on here that leads to a little demonstration that Dr. Lang set up too.
Awesome. I will try to type that in the chat in a second, so people can click on it. Margie would like to know, how are you going to price this product? Is it a one-time purchase, or is there a subscription associated with it?
So this isn't set in stone for sure, but right now, I think it would just be a one-time purchase. And depending on what features get added in down the line, like one of the potential ways to offset the cost of this, car insurance companies offer discounts to certain like vehicle anti-theft devices, like if you have a low jack on your car. So if any additional stuff gets added on, like GPS tracking, that will probably warrant a subscription fee. But right now, I think it would just be one-time purchase.
Great, great. Let's see. So Mark would like to know, is this built into the car during manufacturing or on any car currently on the road?
No, the stuff that is built in that would be built into the car right now, or that's included in like the key fobs, or I think even Apple has like you can start your car with your phone kind of thing. That stuff is built off of using the CAN bus, which I mentioned has some vulnerabilities involved in it. This device is different in that it measures the actual physical power coming off of the battery. So even if you do get into the CAN bus communications on the car, this is not going to be fooled by that at all. And that's linking back to the extra layer of cybersecurity that this thing has, because it measures physical power signals coming off of the battery itself.
Great. Is there anything, James Graham would like to know, is there anything that would keep auto manufacturers with large development budgets from developing their own solution to compete with this?
So what I would say there is the car manufacturers themselves, this sounds a bit cynical, but the car manufacturers themselves probably do not care as much about car theft as like insurance companies or the people who own the car. Like if you think about it, if a car gets stolen, that almost kind of benefits them because you're going to buy another vehicle. And in the auto industry, a couple extra dollars on a single like vehicle doesn't sound that bad, but when you're making 1 million of them, it becomes a pretty significant cost to the company. So the answer is they could, but I believe it's pretty unlikely just because of the way that their business model works.
Great. Sally Hatcher has raised her hand. So go ahead, Sally.
Great, thanks. So Sam, way to just jump in on the fly for this. Can you talk to us a little bit about customer discovery? And I'm wondering if you've actually talked to any of those major car manufacturers. Do they have a roadmap for any changes in the key or changes in security? Do you know what they actually want to do within the industry?
So that I'm not 100% sure of right now. The surveys and stuff that I talked about, Dr. Lang has pretty much done all those. We are kind of looking into exploring that. We're doing a R2M right now. So we're looking to get in contact with some of these people and figure out what the way forward is in that. Kind of good news, worst case scenario, in my opinion, say car manufacturers already have like a way forward and they figured it out and everything. This is right now, like an aftermarket solution. So even if car manufacturers solve this problem, you're still going to have millions of vehicles on the road that still have these vulnerabilities, and they're going to have this vulnerability for probably a decade to come. So don't know for sure. We're looking to find out. And Dr. Illing may have already done some of that. I might just not know about it.
Great. Ian McLaughlin would like to know what happens if somebody just removes the unit from the battery?
So if you remove the unit from the battery, it sets off an alarm. And besides that, you'd have to physically remove the unit from the battery or rewire the battery to get it running. And right now the unit just alarms.
Got you. Susan Kraus says that it seems like you could put your key fob in a Faraday bag right now, and that would provide like a similar amount of protection. How does your product sort of improve on that?
So this improves with, I would say, the ease of use. There's always ways to make your stuff more secure, like if, remember to lock your door kind of thing. But the bottom line is that it's passive, right? So if you have a car key, you have to take it out of the bag every single time. People aren't going to do that. They're going to forget to do that. This, once it's installed, you don't really have to do anything extra. Like you get in your car, punch in an extra code, and you're gone. So
Right.
I would say it really has to do with people's behavior more than like, it's a convenience thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. I have a question for you. So for your initial sales, how do you envision reaching your customers? Are you going to sell directly to customers, or will you go through car customization shops? And then also, could you talk about how installation would be done?
So I would say that'd be ideally a multi-avenue kind of thing. We would sell directly to customers, but we would also like to get picked up by some stores like maybe AutoZone or O'Reilly, or think like Car Toys would be a good one. They sell a lot of aftermarket car stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, getting more people involved would be way better than just selling it ourselves. And installation, still would have to make a manual and all that kind of stuff. That's the phase one, like 18 months that we're looking at. The installation would actually be way easier than regular car alarm systems, because I mentioned it doesn't interface with the CAN bus on the vehicle. So you would only have two connections. You actually put this thing directly on top of the battery, and then you just hook your battery cables on top of that, and then you plug something into your cigarette lighter. So that would also be one of the major selling points, is ease of installation.
Great. Are you looking to establish partnerships with auto industry players or electronics? I saw somebody on your team is with Samsung. So what do those partnerships look like, or how do you anticipate that they will look?
So those, I think, would be something that comes with the product being proven. So if that does happen, I believe it would start with the third-party aftermarket kind of thing, people installed on the vehicles themselves. And if we can actually miniaturize this enough, we could actually get it built into batteries itself. So phase one and phase two, kind of like third-party aftermarket solutions. And if it catches a lot of traction, then maybe we can get some bigger players into the picture.
Great. Do you have a proposed exit strategy for this company? Do you see being acquired by a larger company, or what's your strategy?
So I do not. I think Dr. Illing has talked about it a couple times, but I honestly don't know the details on that part.
That's understandable. And what about your marketing strategy? Do you have a plan to sort of Besides, I know you talked about selling directly to customers, but do you have a plan to sort of reach those customers and figure out exactly who might be most likely to purchase your product?
That I'm not 100% sure about yet. We're looking at some stuff in that R2M class as well, actually, because earlier I mentioned there's certain areas where this is more applicable, like California and then like the Denver metropolitan area. So there's some more work to be done on that end, but I definitely think there's going to be some demographics involved there. So like age of your vehicle, where you live. Well, we have to do some more work to figure out exactly like what areas our product would be more marketable in.
Great. That is time for Beoth and Sam. So everybody give them a great round of applause. Thanks a lot, Sam, especially for coming in on such short notice. All right. So next up, we have BCOS. And BCOS is a company that incentivizes commute plans for individual employees to promote healthier lifestyles, convenience, and flexible mobility, as well as cost savings. So let's take it away. Co-founder is Moatassem Abdallah. So take it away, Moatassem.
Right, thanks, Tasso. Can you hear me, everyone?
Yes, and I can see your slides. Excellent.
Can you guys see my screen? I just want to make sure it's good. All right, perfect. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Business Commute Optimization System, or BCOS, a tool that will revolutionize our trips to shared destinations. We all know how stressful and time-consuming commuting can be. Based on the latest reports in 2019, the average commuter spent around 28 minutes commuting one way. Think about it. This is equivalent to more than 5 weeks of work time each year, when the average worker only gets 4 weeks of vacation. Yes, the pandemic disrupted work and changed the commute for most of us, but data show that employees are returning to the office and mobility is still a major issue. As you can see, in 2022, the US recorded 1.3 billion trips per day, which is very close to our pre-COVID trips. Based on 30 interviews in customer discovery that we conducted, we found out that employers pay a lot for parking, try to bring employees back to the office after the pandemic, meet air quality provisions, earn related tax benefits, achieve ESG goals, and identify transportation programs that provide the best value for their employees. That's why we created BCOS, a platform that identifies customized commute plans to employees and promotes commute behavior change using gamification and rewards. BCOS generates commute plans based on employers' objectives, such as reducing emissions, parking demand, or even bringing employees back to the office. The employees will experience this by improving their commute and at the same time getting rewards as they follow recommendations. As you can see, an employee can check his or her benefits such as monetary incentives, commute savings, burning calories, social hours, reduction in emissions, and community points as gamification. Now let's take a look at how BCOS works with Josh. Josh is a cool guy that commutes 3 days a week to downtown Denver, but he spends around 25 minutes driving alone from the tech center. Josh started to use BCOS so he doesn't worry about his commute. Josh reported his commute needs where the system generates recommended commute plans. Josh receives his commute plans on his phone where he can accept or decline these plans. If Josh declines these plans, that's not a problem because BCOS will provide an alternative plans that Josh will accept. For example, Josh is recommended to pick up Kate on his way to work on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Because Josh and Kate work at the same place and could save a parking spot, the employer is willing to offer $10 each a week for following this plan. Now let's take a look at the benefits for Josh, Kate, and their employer. With BCOS, Josh saves around $80 per month on his commute cost, socializes with his coworker Kate, earns rewards, and reduces his emissions by 25%. On the other hand, Kate saves around $110 on her commute per month, overcomes her commute stress, burns 200 more calories, and saves 50% on her emissions. Josh and Kate's employer with 100 employees saves around 5 grants per month on parking, and all employees saves around 2 grants per month. The employer receives $80,000 in tax credit and reduces transportation emissions by 30%, which can be a great marketing tool. We have an interdisciplinary team with a combined experience of over 100 years. I am Mutassim Abdallah, CEO and co-founder of Because, with a strong expertise in operation research and transportation demand management. Caroline Clevenger is COO and co-founder, supporting Because in operation, partnership, and strategic planning. Shahriar Munghasmi is co-founder and leading engineering and technical development of our platform and algorithms. Nora Kern is a project manager overseeing our program implementations. Hector Rodriguez and John Tolva are advisors supporting Because in commercialization and partnership. So far, we received like $750,000 of non-dilutive fundings from various organizations over the past years. The earlier funding that we received was used to develop the system website, algorithms, and mobile apps. The latest funding from OEdit is currently being used to run a number of pilot programs to identify product market fit and go-to-market strategies. We gained a strong interest from various transportation organizations over the past years that are supporting us in testing our service and documenting its value with employers. We have 5 pilot programs that we are planning to run in the coming weeks, and we are currently discussing a work relationship with one of the transportation management associations. For example, we landed an agreement with the City and County of Denver on a pilot program to improve commuting as employees return to the office. The City of Denver allocated $10,000 as incentives for 150 employees during a period of 4 weeks. And the reason for that is to measure commute behavior change based on incentives. The city is interested in reducing single occupant vehicle trips, parking demand, and also achieving their climate goals. As a pilot program takes place, we're going to measure how effective incentives are in changing commute behavior and how much it costs us per employee to cause behavior change. The program uses gamification to promote green commute to the office and prizes at the end of the program for employees with most green commutes. The program will measure reduction in emissions, single occupant vehicle trips, and parking demand as a result of using Because. The program will also identify potential tax credits that are applicable to private businesses. This is a big opportunity with 210 million commute trips per day. It is also perfect timing as after the pandemic, as employers and employees are looking at ways to improve commuting. McKinsey reported recently that there is $3 to $4 billion investment in peer-to-peer car sharing and ride sharing. Colorado recently passed a new bill that will allow employers to receive up to $250,000 of tax credits in the coming 10 years. This is on green commuting. Also, there's around 700,000 employers in the US with more than 20 employees as potential buyers of the service. Not only that, but also government policies that mandate reduction of transportation emissions are expected to be promoted or even mandated in the coming few years. This will allow Because to be a prime tool to support employers to comply with such policies. Finally, forget about the one solution fits all that has been used in the past decades. We're tired of that. We created a platform that employers will adopt and employees will use to create customized solutions and disrupt the traditional commute behavior. We are seeking $500,000 in seed funding in the coming 6 months to hire full-time key members of our team. We are also looking at developing new features to our platform and expanding our service. We created a new approach to revolutionize commuting to shared destinations, and we developed a platform to implement our solution. The platform is scalable with potential applications across the nation and internationally. So join us to revolutionize how each of us commute to our shared destinations. So thank you for your time and happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mutassim. So I have a question for you here. So that's awesome that you are starting a pilot program with the City of Denver. Can you talk a little bit more about this pilot program and how you're going to scale after beyond the pilot?
Great. So thanks also. So this is one of the first pilot programs that we're trying to run. So one of the problems that the city and county of Denver was facing is that they're trying to bring the employees back to the office and also try to encourage like more greener commute. So that was a perfect opportunity to encourage employees as they return to the office to try different commute behaviors and also get like incentives. So this is like the first pilot program that we will assess how effective the incentives are in a changing commute behavior. And after that, we will build like more detailed programs as an outcome specifically in Denver. We are going to expand after that. We worked with several transportation management associations. Those associations, they have a strong contacts with employers, and we're going to deal with them like we have 7 in Colorado. We're going to deal with them to again reach to those employers and have like more applications of our.
Who's that?
So,
well, you're going to have that. I mean, you know, there's obvious that you're going to.
Was that a question or?
No, that was somebody who was supposed to be muted.
Okay. No worries.
But so thank you very much. That that answered my question perfectly. Another question that I have is, do you have any thoughts on working with community events such as festivals or things like that, where Ubers can be prohibitively expensive when you've got a bunch of people trying to go to the same place or leave the same place?
Excellent question. So actually, this is like how like our algorithms work. They are not essentially work for businesses, but they actually work for any event, any commute to shared destinations. We started with like the businesses because they're just like a pattern commute, and we can optimize it, and we see like it's an easier just way to get into the market. But we're planning to work with large events like theaters and things like that to just plan how people commute to those events. So it's one of the things that we're going to work on, but it's in our plan for sure.
Excellent. It looks like Sally Hatcher has her hand raised, so go ahead, Sally.
I do, and I just couldn't figure out how to write this. So such an interesting presentation. I love how this has developed over time. And Motassem, I'm curious about your research, and is your research around what kind of incentives really drive commuters, or I'm trying to figure out how do you get people to change their mind? And is the incentive that it's gamified and it's more fun, or is there an incentive that you can actually reduce time commuting or make the commute more fun? But how exactly are you trying to get people to change their behavior?
Excellent question, Sally. And this is really a complex problem because so the way that we are tackling this problem is that we're first trying to identify what commute options do you have to get from home to work and work to home. And again, you can use Google to know like if you're going to use a public transit or drive, so that would be accessible to you. But one of the commute modes that you wouldn't necessarily know is just like if you happen to live nearby one of your colleagues, so you could have like other carpool options. So what we're trying, so this is the first thing is just to know what options do you have to get to the shared destination. The second one is that like the employer could provide you incentives to make those options more appealing to you. So if you're an employee and you usually drive to the office, you could use a public transit. It takes a little bit more time, but it's not appealing to you as much. But now if you use maybe a public transit or carpool and get those incentives, that might be like something that you would be interested to do. So here we're doing like two things, try to identify what is available for each one. The second thing is also what incentives are enough, like for people to actually change their behavior. And also the way that our algorithms work, we're trying to find out like recommendations for commute that have high likelihood to be implemented or accepted, and we use machine learning to feel once people like know that this is a good plan for them, we actually try to like implement it for others and so on and so forth. So we learn as we implement those programs on what people actually like, and then try to cause this behavior change.
Great, thank you. I can imagine that through your app, you're going to be able to collect a lot of data, such as location-based data and how people commute. Do you have any plans to do anything with this data or make any use this to make any money?
Excellent. So the way our solution works is that we start with businesses and then like co-located businesses, like a number of businesses that happen to be like in the same location or maybe close by, and then we can optimize their commute, and then we can get that like on a larger scale neighborhoods and or business districts and so on and so forth. So as we collect more data and more data, then we will be able to use this data maybe to inform like government or policymakers on what is the best policy to make like a behavior change. So definitely we're going to leverage the data that we collect on how people commute on just making more effective policies. There have been so many policies in the past that were mandated or used, but they were not as effective just because maybe one of the things was just lack of data on how people commute, like or actual data.
Great, thank you. Can you talk a little bit more about the milestones that you're hoping to achieve with the $500,000, and particularly in terms of how many users or company customers are you expected to bring on board in that time?
Excellent. So like the funding that we are seeking now is just like to hire like full-time positions for a CEO, like developer and project manager. We've been like operating like with the university resources in the past, but for us like to be able to scale this and reach out to more customers, then we will have to have just like a full-time employees to lead to that. Like our first year, we're still working like on those numbers, but we're imagining having like 40 customers in terms of like commute assessment. We have different services that we offer to the customer. So first is like commute assessment. We offer you what are the best programs out there for you to improve commuting at your organization. We don't cause any behavioral change, we just give you recommendations. And the second plan is actually to guide you and allow because to actually offer or cause commute behavior change. For the commute assessment, we're imagining having like 40 programs in just a reminder of this year, and the behavior change probably like 20 to 30 programs.
Excellent. And that's all the time we have for Bikas and Motassem. So thank you very much, and let's all give a round of applause.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, and so now we are down to our very last presentation. So for our final presentation, I would like to introduce Camilla and Vitro 3D. Vitro 3D manufactures dental aligners at the point of care using a revolutionary new light-based 3D printer that drastically reduced print times into from hours down to several minutes. So take it away, Camilla.
Amazing. Thank you all so much for having me. This has been an amazing demo day. I'm really excited to be here with such amazing companies. My name, I believe I unmuted myself, right? Okay.
Yes.
It's telling me to unmute myself, which is odd. But yes, my name is Dr. Camilo Scapegui. I'm co-founder and CEO of Vitro 3D, a company revolutionizing 3D printing for life sciences. Our technology enables physicians to produce life-changing and life-saving medical equipment at the point of care. Vitro 3D is a volumetric 3D printing company with the fastest, lowest cost, and easiest to use method to produce personalized dental devices at the point of care in under 10 minutes. If any of your family members have had dental aligners, you know what I'm talking about when I say this is a big hassle for dentists, orthodontists, and patients. They have to pay very expensive lab fees and they're not engaged with the treatment process. Customers don't really like this lack of engagement either, and there's also a really high cost to customers, which makes aligners often inaccessible to them. These issues arise because today 3D printers are not able to produce aligners. Instead, all they can do is produce a mold from which an aligner is made through a multi-step process. This causes a massive waste of time, money, and resources. But that's where we come in. Vitro 3D has developed a volumetric 3D printer, which enables direct 3D printing of aligners without all of the wasted processes and costs associated with the current system. Our solution leads to lower costs for the provider, better margins for aligner treatments, and instant gratification and treatment for patients. Unlike layer by layer 3D printing, volumetric 3D printing does not use layers at all. It works by projecting a sequence of images into resin, and as its volume rotates, all of that intensity adds up in the middle and the entire geometry materializes at once. This makes it 100 times faster than any other 3D printing method on the market, which is fast enough to print devices at the point of care. The opportunity that we have at hand is really going to allow us to target the dental aligner market as our beachhead, but also allow us to get into different markets such as preclinical drug testing, regenerative medicine, and additional opportunities. So there are several opportunities for a high-speed 3D printer. We've chosen dental aligners as our beachhead because this is our fastest and most lucrative go-to-market pathway. Our volumetric 3D printer is protected by a number of patents, which cover a completely new geometry that allows us to print into a cartridge, among others. These patents cover dental applications as well as other life science applications, which create an intellectual property moat around our technology. Dental is our initial market because it is the fastest and most lucrative way to market for our technology. It is the largest user of light-based 3D printing in the world today. It is growing at a CAGR of 29.5%, and it will be valued at $11.3 billion by 2026. Some of the major companies in this market are Align Technology, Smile Direct Club, and Byte. And we don't see them so much as direct competitors as we see them as potential partners to bring this technology to market. Our main competitors are at this point are old legacy layer by layer 3D printers that are currently used in a multi-step process in order to produce these aligners. Other volumetric 3D printers in the market are Zolo and Readily 3D, and they're the only volumetric 3D printers in the market today, currently limited in their technology. Vitra 3D outperforms competitors in 3 key areas. We can print faster, we're much more cost effective, and no technical expertise is necessary to operate our system. We have several revenue opportunities, including the sale or lease of our 3D printers to dental labs initially, and then to dental offices ultimately. This is also in addition to the ongoing cartridge production and sales that will be as a hardware as a subscription service. And this is a large market opportunity as there are almost 200,000 dental offices in the United States, over 700,000 worldwide, and over 1.6 million people who do aligning treatments every year. We have a lot of momentum. So far, we've secured over $250,000 in non-dilutive funding through the New Venture Challenge, the Lab Venture Challenge, and other programs. We have a proof of concepts completed, and we have the cartridge product design completed as well. So what's next for us? The Vitra 3D volumetric printer is currently in product development, and we're raising a pre-seed round of funding to enable us to develop a production-ready product. We are in conversations with 4 commercial partners in the materials, dental, and aligner space, and we are talking to a local contract manufacturer as we speak. Once our alpha volumetric cartridge printer is developed in 2024, we will partner with one of the aligner manufacturers that we're currently in conversations with in order to have our first revenue stream. This will allow us to leverage our existing sales and marketing channels to distribute our product in the dental industry. And this partnership will also allow us to remain lean and agile to continue focusing on the development of the printing technology to impact more sectors in the life science industry. As I mentioned, we're raising a pre-seed round of funding of $1.25 million, which we have $500,000 committed at this point, and we recently heard amazing news that we were also awarded $250,000 through the Colorado Office of Economic Development. These funds will allow us to make key hires, complete a production scale volumetric 3D printer, and also have a paid minimum viable product with one of our partners. These funds will make it so we get to market much, much faster than originally. We have the best team that could execute on this vision. Our team is composed of well-versed researchers and engineers in volumetric 3D printing, and we're bringing in a head of product in order to get us to commercialize this technology even faster. We have amazing business and scientific advisors who have been at the forefront of volumetric 3D printing, including the 2 inventors of the original technology. We are Vitra 3D, and we have the technology to create multiple solutions that enable physicians to produce life-changing and life-saving medical equipment at the point of care. Thank you so much for your time, and please join us in revolutionizing 3D printing. And I welcome any questions.
All right, thank you so much, Camilla. So any questions for Camilla, feel free to raise your hand or type them in the chat. I have a question for you to start it off. When you go to sell to dental offices, how long do you anticipate these sales will take, since you're kind of getting them to change their business model a little bit? Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. So from the customer conversations we've had, though it does change their model in a way, the dentists that we spoke to, especially the ones that have been using aligner treatments thus far, are very excited to have something that can be produced at the office, because there have been changes in terms of how accurate aligner treatments are when it comes to that month-to-month process. So something that we've seen in our customer interviews, or actually heard, is that they'll prescribe, let's say, 6 months of aligner treatments. The patient will get all 6 months worth of aligner treatments, but then 3 months into the treatment process, they find that the teeth actually didn't change in a predictable manner, and they have to now print additional aligners through whatever provider they're using, whether it's Align or another company that's going through the dentist office. So we do see this as a positive. Once to the sales cycle itself, we know going to dentist office by dentist office is definitely a much slower sales cycle. And that's why we're seeing our potential partnership with a dental aligner partner as being so instrumental for us to get into dentist offices, because they already have established channels. So we see our sales cycle really being in combination with our partnership that allows us to get there in a much faster manner than if we did it ourselves.
Great, great. Warren has a question in the chat here. Are there any limitations in the resins that you can use, and do they achieve comparable value and benefit to the beachhead markets resins? So what's already being used?
Yeah, so there are some limitations. One of them is actually almost a positive limitation. So usually with standard layer by layer 3D printing, you need an absorbing material in order to limit the light from passing through layer by layer. But in volumetric 3D printing, we actually prefer transparent materials because the light is passing through the entire vial or cartridge in our case. So though it's a limitation in actually printing opaque materials and other applications, for dental applications, it's actually a better capability that our printer has when it comes to that transparency. Another limitation is actually the viscosity of the material. So when you have a volumetric 3D printer where you're rotating either the light or the actual vial itself, you're running into now forces that are actually having material move. So we don't want to be using materials that are so low viscosity that they're like water, that they're going to be moving and shifting during the printing process. So we actually prefer higher viscosity materials. And then when it comes to our cartridge product itself, if we're actually exchanging materials within the cartridge product that you see on the screen here, we want it to be low viscosity enough to be able to interchange those materials. And then do we achieve comparable value benefits? I have the chat open. And yes, I would say that they do achieve comparable value and benefits. It's really dependent on which materials and which applications we're using. We're currently talking to 2 different materials partners who are really excited about using their materials in our printer. So when it comes to our revenue model, at first, because we are a 3D printing technology, we're really seeing ourselves as a service-based company in the beginning. So that's our first channel, in partnership with one of these aligner manufacturers that we're currently in conversations with. So the way that it would work is that we would sell per aligner and actually be able to deliver those aligners directly to the dentist through our aligner partner. Ultimately, what we would like to do is have a hardware as a service model where we are able to provide the printer for a low cost, and then the cartridges themselves would be the subscription model. So if we know that dentists are doing about 100 aligner treatments per year, then they would get a monthly subscription of cartridges, depending on whether they're aligners or they're printing other devices such as retainers, whitening trays, which can also be produced using our printer. And then when it comes to the servicing of units, That's what really allows this leasing / hardware as a service model to really incorporate the cost of servicing into the contract. And in addition, we foresee being able to work closely with the dentist that we're working with in those initial customers in order to be able to foresee how much servicing we actually need to do when we do scale up.
Do you have a timeline for shifting your business model right now?
Yeah, so the timeline that we're foreseeing is once we've secured this aligner partner, because we'll be acting as a service model, this will allow us to also be able to do an IRB approved study where we can actually start to see our aligners being produced inside of patients and get some revenue that way. And then once we're fully approved by the FDA, we can shift into a model where we're doing now this hardware as a service model. But we really foresee this being about 9 months to make sure that we get enough customer feedback and that we have all of the approvals necessary to actually be able to put a printer inside of an office.
Great. Can you talk a little bit about your capital strategy? How much a runway does this 1.25 million raise give you? And what sort of inflection point are you hoping to hit with that? And when do you anticipate needing to raise another round?
Absolutely, yeah. So we anticipate that $1.25 million is really going to get us to that aligner partner secured. Where we really would like to be in terms of inflection point is having a 3D printer that has all the capabilities necessary to go into a dental lab, or for us to almost function as a dental lab. So have a lot of the materials that are necessary. So there's already some materials out there that are FDA approved for retainer purposes. So make sure that those materials work really well with our printer, and have that inflection point being that we can deliver maybe not the beta version of our printer, but having that alpha printer and that 3D printing into cartridge fully ready for our next raise. Excellent.
Can you talk a little bit more about the synergies between your dental product and the future applications? Is this product development process going to inform your future product development?
Absolutely. So, we are a 3D printing technology, and we've seen a lot of 3D printers, go into the market and say we can 3D print anything. And we've taken a slightly different approach to actually make it a technology that allows for a manufacturing of specific product to be easier, faster, cheaper, etc. So the first steps of actually getting this to market, such as getting the alpha volumetric printer ready and refining into cartridge, is really specific to the dental space when it comes to the materials, but in general of the 3D printer product itself, it's actually quite applicable to other markets. And as we're testing with these materials partners, we're going to be testing materials specifically for dental aligners and dental applications, but we will also be using different materials that have other applications in the dental space. So that's some of the parallelization there. We foresee that once we start to work with our aligner partner and really establish the materials that we're using for the dental application specifically, it will get a little bit more siloed in the dental space. But as we grow and as we get some revenue from there, we'll be able to actually achieve other material properties with other materials for other applications, such as the tissue engineering and drug discovery applications that I talked about a little bit earlier.
Great. And as final question, as you shift to hardware as a service, how will you handle the need for ancillary devices to service the providers? So for instance, dental scanners and movement modeling.
Yeah, so there has been a big shift in the dental industry to move into digital dentistry. We've been actually looking at a lot of different companies in terms of how they've handled this. There's actually one company out there that's giving 3D imagers for free as long as they engage in their services. So there is a wide shift into this new model. And that was something that Johnny and I actually talked about recently of like, if there is somebody that really wants to work with us and wants to engage in this new technology in their dental office, the 3D imaging system is about $10,000. So at that point, we could mimic some of these processes that have been done in the past, which is actually provide the scanner, potentially provide a discount on the printer, and really gain our revenue from those ongoing cartridge sales.
Great. Thank you so much, Camilla. Let's give it up for Camilla and Vitro 3D. And then let's also give one more round of applause to everybody who pitched today. We saw some excellent pitches, and this was a phenomenal demo day. So thank you to all the co-founders and other people who have been working with these teams for the past years. This has been a great Ascent session. And with that, I will hand it back over to Emily for the wrap up.
Awesome. Really fantastic job with all the moderation, Tasso. Great help for our teams. And thank you all for all of your questions for everybody. That really was fun. I hope you had fun as well. I'll just leave on a parting note. It really was such a joy to work with these 12 teams over the last 4 months. I feel so grateful that there are so many smart, innovative folks out in the world, and feel really lucky that I'm able to work with them at least a little bit every day. A couple of calls to action before we leave. If you would like to connect with any of these teams, there were asks for new roles, there were asks for industry support, certainly asks for funding opportunities. If you'd like to get involved with any of these teams in any way, please reach out. You can always find me. I'll type my email in the chat in just a minute. Reach out to them directly if you were able to catch their contact information. But really, from my perspective, what these teams need most as they're on the precipice of commercialization is support from our community, support from all of you. So reach out to the teams, even if it's just a shout out and a virtual high five. And one last call to action. Venture Partners is always looking for more volunteers to get involved, whether it's mentoring, whether it's attending these great events and supporting these teams, whether it's working on training for some of our commercialization curriculum. So please also reach out if you're interested in learning more about Venture Partners, getting engaged with Venture Partners. That applies for other founders out there as well. A lot of our programming is open to the broader community. So find us online, send me an email, send our team an email. And with that, enjoy the maybe partially rainy day, at least here in Colorado. Founders, mentors, we'll see you this evening for our celebration. And thank you all one last time for joining us. We'll see you next time.